But first, we're just learning about the very first Ivy League school, Ivy League college in this country, to leave its test optional admissions policy in place, possibly forever. That means students are not required to submit SAT or ACT scores for admissions. These are a couple of standardized tests that have been a rite of passage and a source of anxiety for students for decades. And now this whole test optional trend is catching on big time. It's our original tonight, and NBC's Emilie Ikeda has more.
It's college admissions season. High school seniors are eagerly waiting to find out if their application and their standardized test scores were good enough to get them into their dream school.
There is so much pressure around, getting a certain score, getting literally just pressure around a number.
Parisa Verma, among those stressed out seniors. She applied to Columbia University in New York. While Verma took the SATs 3 times, she decided not to submit her scores with her application.
I wasn't exactly satisfied with my scores. The college admissions office also agreed that it wouldn't exactly help my application to submit scores.
1,700 prominent schools, such as Columbia University, suspended requirements for SAT or ACT scores, according to Fair Test, many introducing a temporary change because of the coronavirus pandemic. But test optional policies are proving to have staying power. This week, Columbia University became the first Ivy League school to extend it indefinitely. A decision rooted in the belief that students are dynamic, multifaceted individuals who cannot be defined by any single factor. A day later, William and Mary also suspended testing requirements, following what they call an effective 3-year trial.
The students we admitted with test scores and the students we admitted who did not submit test scores basically had virtually identical freshman retention rates, clearly gave us confidence in knowing that this program was working and our students were prepared.
Advocate for limiting standardized testing, Harry Fader, believes more schools will follow.
They're going to become more reluctant to use standardized tests when there are lots of other indicators of what a student is really like.
But test optional policies raise a big question for students: to submit scores or not. Some students worry they could hurt their chances of getting in or getting a scholarship without test scores.
Introduced a lot of gray into the process, and that has added some stress to students and parents, and I will say school counselors too, who are trying to provide the best advice.
Janet Godwin is the chief executive of the ACT. She acknowledges standardized tests are only one component of an application, but she says an important one.
Scores like the ACT are important because they are objective. They mean the same thing from one school district to another. They're not as subjective as things like letters of recommendation and other dimensions of a admissions portfolio.
As for Parisa Verma, she hopes the strength of her whole application, her essay, a strong transcript, and extracurriculars will earn her an acceptance letter to Columbia.
I hope that they're able to overlook the fact that I didn't submit a score and instead focus on the parts of my application that I believe represent who I am more wholly than a number would.
Emilie is with us now. Emilie, it's so interesting here, especially for anybody who knows a high school student, is a high school student, maybe is early in college and had to take the SAT or the ACT or didn't, considering the pandemic is part of what moved this conversation forward about not having these test requirements in place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not actually a new debate necessarily. It's been a conversation that has been ongoing for years. Wake Forest, for instance, they actually made test scores, submitting them optional more than a decade ago. And other universities and colleges have taken that a step further. UCLA, for instance, they won't even give students the option to submit ACT or SAT test scores. They don't take it into consideration. Proponents say that it helps reduce barriers, especially among low-income students, to gaining a higher education. Think about just how much money goes into sometimes preparing for those kinds of exams. But on the other side, people caution those exams can actually sometimes be a more affordable option or a more affordable way for students to shine in comparison to gaining those extracurricular activities. So a lot of opinions on this, Hallie. Certainly not the last we're going to hear on this conversation.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.